My name is Margaret, and I am 76 years old. I live in a small town in Texas where the winters are not always harsh, but when the wind cuts through you, it feels as if even your bones freeze. I never thought that at my age, after raising children and grandchildren with all my love, I would one day find myself standing outside in the cold, rejected by my own flesh and blood. The story begins with my granddaughter, Emily. She was once the light of my life. When she was little, she would run into my arms, hug me so tightly, and say, "Grandma, you're my best friend." I spoiled her with cookies, knitted sweaters, and bedtime stories. To me, Emily was not just a granddaughter, she was a piece of my heart walking outside of my body. But people change, time changes hearts. Somewhere along the way, Emily grew distant. By the time she was in her 20s, she no longer wanted to hear my advice or sit and talk with me. She began rolling her eyes at my old-fashioned ways. Still, I believed deep down she loved me. After all, hadn't I always been there for her? That night, the night everything shattered, I went to visit her. It was cold, bitterly cold, the kind of night where you clutch your coat tighter and pray someone opens the door quickly. I knocked gently, then louder. Finally, Emily opened the door, but instead of the warm welcome I expected, she looked at me with annoyance. "Grandma, what are you doing here?" she asked sharply. I smiled nervously. "Sweetheart, I came to check on you. It's cold outside, and I brought you some soup. I thought we could sit and talk, just like old times." But Emily's face hardened. She glanced behind her as if worried someone might see me. Then she stepped outside, blocking the doorway. Her words cut deeper than the wind. "Grandma, you're not needed here. Go home." I froze. Surely she was joking. Surely my Emily, the little girl who once held my hand so tightly, wouldn't mean such a thing. "Emily," I whispered, "please, it's cold out here. Let me in." Her jaw tightened. I said, "You're not needed. You don't belong here anymore." And with that, she shut the door. The sound of that lock clicking echoed louder than thunder in my heart. I stood there, trembling, holding the soup I had made with love. My eyes filled with tears as I realized the bitter truth. I had been cast aside. But I didn't know then that night was only the beginning. The humiliation, the rejection, and the painful discoveries that followed would change my life forever. I stood there on Emily's doorstep for what felt like hours, though it could only have been minutes. The cold Texas wind whipped against my face, but the sting in my chest was far worse than the chill in the air. My hands shook so badly that the container of soup slipped from my grasp and spilled across the steps, steam rising briefly before fading into nothingness just like the warmth between us. I turned slowly, each step heavier than the last. My old bones ached, but it was not from age, it was from carrying the weight of rejection. Never in my 76 years had I felt so unwanted. By the time I reached the bus stop, my cheeks were streaked with frozen tears. A young couple waiting there looked at me strangely. The woman whispered something to the man, and they both laughed softly. I lowered my head, embarrassed, clutching my bag tighter. Was I really so pitiful? When I finally reached home, my little one, bedroom house that had been quiet ever since my husband passed away years ago, I sat down in the old rocking chair and tried to collect my thoughts. Memories of Emily as a child kept flashing before me. Her giggles when I pushed her on the swing, her tiny hands gripping mine, the way she used to say, "Don't ever leave me, Grandma." And now she had left me. Worse, she had pushed me away. The next morning, determined to understand, I called my son Emily's father. He answered after the third ring. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice tired. "Son." I began hesitantly. "I went to see Emily last night. She wouldn't let me in. She said I wasn't needed. Do you know why she would treat me like that?" There was a long pause. Finally, he sighed. "Mom, Emily's grown up. She has her own life now. You can't expect her to still want you around all the time." The words pierced me deeper than a knife. All the time. I never asked for all the time. I just wanted an evening, a conversation. He grew impatient. "Mom, don't take it personally. Kids these days are different. Maybe it's better if you give her some space." I hung up the phone, my heart shattering all over again. Not only had my granddaughter humiliated me, but my own son seemed to think I was the problem. That evening, I sat alone with a cup of tea, staring at the wall. The silence of the house pressed in on me. My mind replayed the words, "You're not needed here," over and over. like a cruel song stuck on repeat. But here's the thing, sometimes pain forces you to see the truth. That night, I realized that what happened at Emily's doorstep wasn't just about a cold heart, it was about a deeper family secret. And soon, that secret would come to light. The words "you're not needed here" echoed in my head for days. I tried to distract myself watering the plants, knitting, even baking an old pecan pie recipe, but nothing silenced the sting. My heart wasn't just bruised, it was fractured. One morning, I decided I needed answers. I couldn't live with this emptiness, not knowing why my granddaughter, the girl I once cradled, the girl I raised on weekends while her parents worked double shifts, had turned so cruel. So I gathered my courage, wrapped a shawl around my shoulders, and made my way to Emily's college campus. The moment she saw me, her face darkened. "Grandma, what are you doing here?" she hissed, looking around nervously as if she were ashamed to be seen with me. "I needed to talk," I said softly. "Please, Emily, just tell me why." For a long moment she stared at me, torn between anger and something deeper. Then, with a heavy sigh, she said words that knocked the air right out of me. "Because Dad told me you weren't really there for me when I was little. He said you only stepped in when it was convenient for you. He said you cared more about your own life than helping him raise me." I froze. My son, the very child I had sacrificed for, who I had worked nights and skipped meals to support, had told her that. "Emily," I whispered, my voice shaking, "that's not true. When your father and mother were struggling, I was the one who kept a roof over your heads. I sold my wedding ring to pay for his debts. I babysat you when they couldn't. My words broke into sobs, but Emily crossed her arms, cold as ever. "That's not what Dad said. He said you abandoned him and now you're trying to cling to me out of guilt." I stumbled back, clutching my chest. My son had poisoned her heart against me. For a moment, I thought of just giving up, retreating back into my solitude, letting them believe whatever they wanted. But then something stirred inside me, a fire I hadn't felt in years. "No," I whispered, straightening my back. "This isn't how my story ends." That night, I pulled out an old wooden box from under my bed filled with letters, bills, photographs, and records. Proof of the sacrifices I had made for my son and granddaughter, proof that I had been there all along, even when no one else was. I decided then, if my family wanted to erase me, I would fight for the truth. But I didn't yet realize the truth would shake more than Emily's beliefs. It would uncover a hidden betrayal I had never imagined. The old wooden box sat on my kitchen table, glowing faintly in the lamplight, as though it held the very heartbeat of my past. My hands trembled as I pulled out faded photographs, pictures of me holding Emily on her first birthday, standing by my son's side when he lost his job, and the bills I had paid. When the bank threatened to take his house, the evidence was all there. My love, my sacrifices, my devotion. The next Sunday, I showed up at my son's house uninvited. He opened the door, his face tightening. "Mom, this isn't a good time. Make time," I said firmly, surprising even myself with strength in my voice. "We need to talk, all of us." Emily appeared behind him, clearly annoyed. "Grandma, why are you here again?" I stepped inside before either could protest and set the box down on the table. "Because it's time for the truth." I began pulling out the photos and documents, laying them one by one before their eyes. "This is the electricity bill I paid when your father's lights were shut off. This is the notice from the bank that I fought to stop, selling my own jewelry to save this home. And these," I held up pictures of a smiling Emily in my arms, "are the weekends and nights I spent raising you, Emily, when your parents couldn't." Emily's defiance wavered. She glanced at her father, confused. "Dad," she asked slowly, "you told me Grandma wasn't there for us." My son's jaw clenched, his face darkening. "Emily, don't listen to her. She's twisting the story." But Emily picked up a letter from the pile, one written years ago by her own mother, thanking me for stepping in when she and my son couldn't make ends meet. The handwriting was undeniable. Her eyes widened. This is real." "Yes, it is," I said, tears running down my cheeks. "I've never abandoned you. I was the one holding this family together when it was crumbling. But your father—" I turned to my son, my voice cracking. "Why would you tell her otherwise?" For a moment, silence hung in the room like a heavy curtain. Then my son finally spoke, his voice low, bitter. "Because I was tired of living in your shadow, Mom. Every time I struggled, you swooped in like the savior. Do you know how small that made me feel as a man? I didn't want Emily to see you as the hero of her life. I wanted to be the one she admired. Emily gasped, covering her mouth. Dad, my heart shattered. My son, the boy I had sacrificed everything for, had resented me all along. Not for what I hadn't done, but for everything I had. I stood frozen, staring at him. All those nights I stayed awake, praying for you, all the times I went hungry so you could eat. And you call that a shadow? His eyes flickered with guilt, but his pride wouldn't let him break. Emily's tears spilled over. She turned to me, her voice shaking. Grandma, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I believed him. I shouldn't have. For the first time in years, I saw the love in her eyes again, the little girl who once clung to me with tiny hands, who laughed when I rocked her to sleep. But the wound my son had carved ran deep. I gathered my things slowly, my voice heavy but firm. I won't beg to be in your lives anymore. If you want me, you know where to find me. But I will not allow lies to erase the truth of who I am. I walked out of that house with tears streaming down my face, but also with my head held higher than it had been in years. Little did I know, Emily would soon make a decision that would change everything. The days after that confrontation were some of the quietest of my life. My little Texas home felt emptier than ever. The clock ticked louder, the evenings stretched longer, and the memories pressed heavier on my heart. I kept asking myself the same question. Had I really lost them forever? Then, one crisp morning, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Emily stood there, her eyes red from crying, clutching the very box of memories I had left behind. Grandma, she whispered, her voice breaking. I read every letter. I looked at every photo. I know the truth now. Tears blurred my vision as she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me, the hug I had been longing for, the embrace of love that years of lies had stolen from us. I'm so sorry for how I treated you, she cried. I was cruel. I was blind. I let Dad's bitterness poison me against you. But you were always there. You never stopped loving me. I held her tightly, stroking her hair like I had when she was a child. Oh, my sweet girl. I never blamed you. I only ever wanted you to know that you were loved. For hours we sat at my kitchen table, sipping tea as she truly listened to my stories. She asked questions about her childhood, about her mother, about the sacrifices I had made, and for the first time I saw the shame in her eyes turn into admiration, but she also confessed her anger at her father. How could he lie to me like that? How could he turn me against the one person who saved us? I sighed deeply, because pain makes people do foolish things. Your father let pride blind him, but Emily, don't let bitterness take root in you two. Learn from this, carry love forward, not resentment. She nodded, wiping her tears. You're right. I won't let his mistakes define me. From that day on, Emily visited me often. She mended the broken bridge between us with kindness, laughter, and genuine effort. Slowly, my lonely little home in Texas filled with warmth again. As for my son, he kept his distance. Pride still chained him, and I knew only he could choose to break free, but I no longer carried the burden of waiting for his apology, because I had my answer in the arms of the granddaughter who finally saw me for who I truly was, and the lesson was clear. Family isn't about who claims you when times are easy. It's about who stands by you when storms rage. Love, no matter how bruised, can heal, but only if the truth is allowed to shine. So if you're listening to my story today, let it remind you, never take for granted the hands that fed you, the heart that raised you, and the love that never gave up on you. Because one day, when the world turns cold, those are the very people who could save you, or the very ones you'll wish you hadn't pushed away.